Berkeley, and came in yesterday and has been early this morning, was out doing a TV show with Russ Gibbs out in the Dearborn area. So if any of you live in the Dearborn area and pick up the Russ Gibbs show, you'd be encouraged to tune in. It was a very entertaining half hour. Mr. Yo was born, raised, and educated in China. He attended the Holy Year pilgrimage in Rome in 1933 as a representative of the youth of China. He fought the Japanese invaders as a guerrilla fighter in World War II and was recruited by then Archbishop and later Cardinal Yu Pen to dedicate his life to fight communism, where he's kept that vow till today. He's a special consultant and lecturer on psychological warfare for the Department of Defense and is presently director of the Committee for Accuracy in Media, and he's a spokesperson for the Accuracy in Academia, which is so controversial. We hear so much today, and is doing some wonderful things. And I know that going to the University of Detroit, I have a few candidates for the Accuracy in Academia. Before speaking on his topic of the communist propaganda machine and its victims today, he has volunteered to answer a question asked of Father Roach on the separation of church and state. He's a recognized specialist on the American Constitution. So it's a privilege and an honor to introduce such a well-educated and experienced soldier in the fight against communism. It's particularly exciting for a person, someone of my age and limited experience, to have had the opportunity to talk with a man of such erudition, and I want to publicly thank him for the patience he's shown me today in my badgering him of questions. I like to take the opportunity when I can. So please join me in welcoming to the stand Mr. Bernard Yo.
Thank you, Jeff, for the wonderful introduction. Yes, on this question of separation of church and state, I quite often have to explain this to many, many people. As a matter of fact, a month ago, more than 2 months ago, the Fletcher Institute of Diplomacy sent 16 editors from all over the world, different countries, to my office for me to explain to them the importance of the American Constitution, especially the First Amendment. And I guess because being a foreigner, I have to come into this country, you be more interested to study what makes this country tick more than people like you who were born here and I guess take things for granted. The separation of church and state is probably the most misunderstood the item among all the constitutional questions. Well, maybe it's one of them at least, and also the Second Amendment. The founding fathers of this country was particularly careful, interested to prevent the domination of this country or the government by any particular church, because they suffered badly under the Church of England. It was dominated by one church. It was their personal experience by the conditions at that time. Remember, at that time there were many other denominations persecuted by the Church of England, escaped Europe, England, or the islands, to come to the United States to avoid persecution. So because of that, the very first amendment to the Constitution was to guarantee that the government will be totally independent of any church influence or domination. A lot of people misinterpret this as the country, the nation, or the government should be atheistic or non-believing. That is totally wrong, because the founding document of this country is the Declaration of Independence. That is the first sacred document. America is a unique country with 3 sacred documents: the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the 10 Amendments. All 10, not only the first one, the 10 Amendments. The Declaration of Independence, which is the soul of this country, the Constitution is the vehicle to make this nation work as a vehicle. But the soul, the heart, the mind, the most important part is in the Declaration. And 4 times in the Declaration mentioned God. Beautifully timed as like 4 movements of a symphony. Thomas Jefferson wrote it that way. The first time is the laws of nature and nature's God entitled. First time he mentioned actually God. The second time, we believe the truths are evident that all men are created equal. They're endowed by their Creator, in capital, endowed by their Creator. Recognize men are created by God. The third time, with rectitude of our intentions through the supreme judge, our supreme judge. Third time. Fourth time is that with firm reliance on divine providence, again in capitals. 4 times repeated. The first time named the laws of nature. Nature's God. God made nature, created nature. Second time, God created us as human beings. The third time, God is the supreme judge of the world. The fourth time, God is the will of God which determines everything in this world, divine providence. 4 times. This actually is the only country in the world dedicated, born with the idea that God is the supreme judge, the creator, and his will prevail in this world. It's a magnificent way to have a country to be born. This country, that's why it's the only country to date, no other, born, you are born free, because this is the first nation, that a nation born under God. Thank you. Now, on that question, I'll debate anybody at any time. This is a treat for me, the finale of this trip I just made, this one around the West Coast. Because, as Jeff told you, my the beginning of the trip was to go to the university campuses and to challenge, to talk really, to create a dialogue with the radical students. I did not want to talk only to the conservative students. They're already friends and all we have to do is exchange idea. But I love to get to the radicals because there's a Chinese saying, if you don't go into the tiger's lair, how can you get the tiger's cub? You see, and I want tiger's cubs. So, so I had to use a little bit of trickery, I guess. I go before my arrival on these occasions. The poster that goes around the campus, as a matter of fact, even shocked myself. At the top it says, "Revolutionaries unite. World peace through world revolution. Strategies of avoiding nuclear war through revolutionary activism. Guest speaker, Xing Tzu." Okay. A lifelong revolutionary and guerrilla fighter. Well, Xing Tzu is my real name. Chinese given name. That's there's not a single thing in that poster did I lie about? Yes, I am for revolution. I am absolutely, because without another world revolution, there is no hope for us. In fact, Our Lady of Fatima precisely said that. Not until Russia is converted, there's no hope for peace in the world. So, conversion, revolution, the same thing. What we have to do is turn that country and Poland, throughout East Europe, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, 25 countries with 1.6 billion people, 1/3 of our human race, person out of 3, today lives under communism. How can we have peace? How can we avoid nuclear war? All you need is one little triggering device, and the whole world can blow up. But today my speech is about communist propaganda. All right, propaganda, yes. You know, the problem is the word propaganda. The first time I learned about that word, it had a positive connotation, because when I was 12 years old, I was in Rome, and the very first important institution of learning I visited in Rome was the school called Propaganda Fide. It was a school to teach young seminarians how to promote propaganda, propaganda, the truth, propaganda fide. Propaganda is just a mechanism to promote, to expand, to let people know the truth. But the communists, of course, it's a different thing altogether. For over 70 years now, we have been bombarded by the propaganda, not fide, infidelity, that lies they have been shooting toward us for more than 70 years. So much so that I believe today, whatever the communists are able to achieve, they deserve it, because the effort they put in is unbelievable. They truly, truly work at it. I cannot help but admire them for that kind of dedication. If we have only 1/10 of the kind of dedication, the kind of human effort and resources put in that the communists have put in, we would have won hands down, because we have the truth. To get the truth out, it's so much easier than to tell the lie. To make people believe a lie, you have to keep repeating and repeating and limit people's knowledge, experience, and availability of information. You have to control them in order to keep them along the line. Yes, they work hard at it. I have a lot of admiration for these people. But on the other side, we have to also look at it from more metaphysical side, spiritual side. We have to ask ourselves, why, how come that this lie, this horror, this inhuman system can expand, can get to the point where it is now threatening us directly, even within our own church? We have to ask this question. And the answer is, we have to go back and look the past 70 years, ever since Lenin, using the ideology of Marx, took over the country called formerly Russia, today Soviet Union. For over 70 years now, 70 years, what did we do? We did nothing. The information was available. I was in Shanghai as a boy. We had Russian refugees there. They were trying to tell us, oh yes, I was brainwashed when I was 10 years old, how bad communism was. Oh yes, the Russian refugees, every time they have a chance, oh, this is horrible. More than anything we have ever experienced. I was a young boy. Exaggeration. I'm sure this information was even more readily available here in the United States. What did we do about it? As Christians, what did we do about it? Nothing. Oh yes, when they created a famine in the Soviet Union, created by the farmers purposely to force the regime into a critical position so that they can have a revolution. What happened? We sent food there, spoiled the whole scheme. Yes, of course we did it with a sense of charity, yes, but at the same time we were ignorant. We did not know it was part of the plan by the peasants to force the regime into submission to their demands of a freer country. Now it's so clear. Throughout these over 70 years, how much effort did we put in to think about the suffering of those people? Very little, if any. Then they, after World War II, they took over East Europe through a conniving agreement with Adolf Hitler. They divided Poland. They took over the Baltic states of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. What did we do about it? Nothing. And other East European countries, Czechoslovakia, and other countries, again, we did nothing. We didn't even want to know what's going on. Information was available. Even for me in China, we knew what was going on. Let's, for a few minutes right now, put ourselves in the third dimension. How would God look at us? Yes, all of us try to play God now and then. Huh? It's a sort of, it's a human thing to do. Yes, let's look at our world through the eyes of God. How would he look at us? He sees 1/3 of human race suffering. And I mean suffering the pain that we know nothing of. Not only there is no freedom of speech, there is no freedom of silence. You're not allowed to keep quiet. You have to speak up in support of the system, support atheism, support suppression of other people and their freedoms. And the other side, look at ourselves, wallowing in luxury. And I don't mean food, houses, cars. Those luxuries are not as critical as the luxury of freedom. In our Western world, Not only we demand freedom of speech all the time, access of information all the time, even to the ridiculous state of freedom to print, distribute horrible, dirty pornography, degrading, degenerating material, to even legitimize by law homosexuality, abortion. It's interesting, you know, some of those people who call themselves liberals, abortion is perfectly acceptable to them. At the same time, strange enough, if a horrible murderer who committed some unspeakable horrible things, murdered, raped many people and so on, and when he is going to be put to death by capital punishment, these same people who would allow innocent children to be put away would be demonstrating in front of the jail or courthouse and asked to be pardoned to spare his life. The same people, I sometimes I wonder, I look at them, I said, you want to spare the life of convicted murderers, huh? Oh yes, you know, we should have human charity, freedom, and yet you would allow innocent child never have chance to breathe one breath of air yet. Don't know whether he could be out as a great person or not. Condemn them to death before they're even born. Say, makes sense. They can't answer that question. Yes. We have abused that freedom so much. Again, let's look. How would God look at us? Did we utilize that freedom properly, correctly, spiritually, morally, and humanly? A few months ago, I had an opportunity to speak to a group of ministers, United Church of Christ, I think it's called. Oh, I was much tougher on them. I said, if I were God, look at you. You're supposed to be preaching his words. You're supposed to be telling your congregation to care for people. Did you care about the people in Russia, how they suffered 70 years ago after the revolution? When Lenin was putting one group after another against the wall, have them shot. Did you speak out against that regime? When they took over China, Mao, at every movement, three antis, five antis, anti-rightist, so different kind of movement. Every movement, millions died. Take a look at the book of Guinness Book of Records. You must believe that to be an apolitical book. The Guinness Book of Records says Mao Zedong is the greatest murderer in history of mankind. I bet you think that Hitler was. No, he's a lousy third. Stalin is second. I told these ministers, don't you think God is fair? Of course he is. You have misused your freedom. You have misused that pulpit to talk about human values. You have no concept, no proportion, no balance in giving that message out. You have totally ignored the most persecuted people in the world and turn around and feel sorry for the people, yes, suffering suffering, but far less. You're busy worrying about these poor people. They have bread, but no butter on top. Here are people with no bread at all. You are not worried about them. They have no response. They were in total shock. In fact, one minister had the decency to write to me. He said, "Dear Mr. Yo, the fact you spoke to us, 50 ministers sat there and listened to you for 90 minutes itself is a miracle." Simply, they have never heard such thing before. Yes, that's the problem. Never heard such thing before. Night before last, I went to Tacoma, Washington, just to speak to one woman, a 50-odd-year-old spinster, professor of a very liberal college. I heard about her. I heard about her background, and happened to be a mutual friend who cared deeply about her. And she asked me as a personal favor to talk to her. I spoke to her for 3 hours. And I felt so sorry for her. Her care for people is genuine. And yet, her knowledge so incredibly limited. She was so totally uninformed about the Russian Revolution. She knew nothing about it. All the list of every close comrade of Lenin was tortured to death, humiliated, publicly to denounce themselves as traitors of the revolution, under torture, of course. She never heard that. Only thing she knew, of course, when I mentioned about Trotsky, she heard of Trotsky, and she knew that he was murdered. And I said, "Why? Do you know why?" Well, I guess he wasn't very revolutionary afterwards. Oh, no, wrong. He was still a revolutionary. That's why Stalin had to send a young man to pretend to be joining the movement and hatched him up, cracked his skull with an ice hatchet. The man's name is Ramon Weber. He's in the Soviet Union right now, alive. She didn't know that. So lack of information. After 3 hours, she had no defense. Obviously, I was more informed than her. I knew exactly what I was talking about, facts, figures, dates, places. I knew far more about Marx, Lenin, and Mao Zedong than she did. So she had no defense. She feebly said, "A lot of people are dying in El Salvador and Guatemala." I said, "Sorry, your information is 6 years late." Yes, 6 years ago, Guatemala and El Salvador was under right-wing dictator. Yes, there were killings. But today, the situation has improved. Today, there's democracy in those countries. The killing is subsided to the point that it's quite peaceful today. Killing is going on in Nicaragua by the Sandinistas government. I have proof. By people who supported the Sandinista movement before, by people who were part of the Sandinista movement before, by people who were closely inside the Interior Department. They even have photographs showing at the airport transporting cocaine to the United States. I said, "Give me a chance. I will bring you all this information." She had no defense. Aha, the last thing I said to her, "I value cherish your dedication to the human well-being. You care for people. That's a wonderful thing. I don't want you to care less. I want you to care more. Expand your care to people who are suffering even more than those you have known up to now. Much more. Also, I want you to be brave enough to look into areas, situations, conditions which you have avoided for 40 years. Look into them. And then you will have an entirely different perspective on the situation, and you will feel much happier. I said, your intentional turning away, closing off of looking at that situation is causing you your migraine headache. Oh yes, I said, physical sickness quite often is caused by the mind rebelling against your forced focus on certain area and ignoring the other. I told her about the camera crew of Shirley MacLaine. They went to China, and every day the core crew, isn't that great? Look at this. These people, finally they have a classless society. Every day they were reinforcing each other, oh, this wonderful thing, wonderful place. Everywhere they went, oh, isn't this great? Isn't it wonderful? But they were getting sicker and sicker. They were just listless. They were getting vomiting and stomach upset, not because of the food. Of course, they gave them the best food China can produce. And they didn't know why. They were getting sick. Finally, a sound engineer, a black woman, finally something got hold of her. She said, the heck with this thing. This is horrible. They have no freedom. Look at that. Everything, they're like a bunch of robots manipulated by somebody. We're saying this is good. And she said later on to a friend of mine who's a producer, television producer, she said, I instantly felt relieved. All my aches and pains and feeling gone. The human mind and body is a very strange thing. You cannot intentionally regulate it to channel it in certain things and promote it without suffering consequences. And I told this lady that. I said, try it. Look at the things. Those books you'd never dare to read. Alexander Solzhenitsyn's books. Look at them. Read them. Broaden your education. And I said, call me. Next time you have migraine headache. Yesterday morning, or rather this morning, I was watching the case about the sanctuary movement. There were the court in Arizona, I think, found them guilty of violating the immigration law, and they were facing the cameras and said they're ready to go to jail and so on. And they said there are 300 churches in this country signed up on the sanctuary movement. I feel sorry, very sorry, that we have failed. Those people, obviously, sincere, meant well, kind-hearted, but so totally misinformed, so totally wrong in their dedication to the wrong cause. Of course, they're stupid as anything, you know. Anyone with any intelligence, you look at the case, you know, clearly. But you can't blame them for being dumb. It's for us, those who are not dumb, to educate them. But we fail to reach them. We have to go out and reach them. Reach out and touch them by saying to them that I'm glad you care. That's a good thing. That's wonderful. And slowly, by winning their confidence, by making them feel comfortable with you, educate them slowly. It may not work, but at least we have to try. The communist propaganda, the most powerful, the deadliest scheme is their infiltration, control, influence, and utilization of our news media. Some time ago, I was wondering, in our church, how can there be so many clergymen, including bishops, or should I say especially bishops, get so wrong, so fouled up? I found out. Because of television. Yes, no joking matter. As priests, they don't either have time or don't have the interest, or, well, maybe at least while wearing the collar, not very convenient to go to theaters and things like that, but it's a great thing in the afternoon, in the evening, have a drink in the house, and then sit down and watch the evening news, which is practically in every church all over the country. At that time, you go to the rectory and you find this going on. For a couple of years, I toured, and I found it to be a routine. When you have this situation day after day, month after month, year after year, listening to people like Walter Cronkite, a man most believed, most believed. Yes, his uncle-like figure makes you feel so believable. And unfortunately, it's precisely what happened to those innocent clergymen. What they don't realize is they're behind time. They are now following the ideas, the lines set by the left 25 years ago. 25 years ago, a young man named David Horowitz, wrong paper, started in Berkeley, California. Wrong paper. Must have it somewhere. Aha, here it is. This is David Horowitz. On April 4th, 1968, he went back to Berkeley and he declared in front of the crowd, he said that because, 86, just 2 weeks ago, he went back to Berkeley after 25 years. Today, not only he supports all the programs, foreign policy programs of President Reagan. He went there to clearly declare that the $100 million of aid to the Nicaraguan freedom fighters is essential to keep Central America free from communist domination. He has found the truth after 25 years. This man was the leader of the pack where these priests and bishops are still following today. He has seen the light. They are left behind, trotting behind. So I don't know how to get this message clear, precise, well-reasoned, intelligent. Oh, that's why he was dangerous 25 years ago. He wrote beautifully. He was the editor of the Rampart magazine, which was the leading ideological guideline for the radicals in the 60s. Yes, they're hanging behind. They don't know that the tide has already turned. We don't have 25 years for them to see the light. We must speed it up, or else I'll conclude my presentation now because, like this minister said, I can speak for 90 minutes, I can speak for 190 minutes. I'm a non-stop speaker. But to conclude this presentation, I want you to think about it and pray real hard, with no malice in heart. Ask a miracle, really, to have these well-meaning people, ladies and gentlemen. They're not evil-minded people, like some bishops here. Oh. Some of these ministers with 300 churches taking refugees from Salvador and Guatemala, they're not evil people. They're just dumb, but unfortunately, give them light. Ask for a miracle. And these people are so important because they are leaders in the communities. They lead the flock. And many people, just because they're religious leaders, they believe they cannot be wrong. So please, pray hard and work at it. Be informed. That's very important. Tool yourself as a fighter. And in this battle, the fighting is not with bullets and guns. It's with words, ideas, and ability to communicate, to project your ideas, your feelings, and your beliefs into somebody else. Thank you.
I was going to remember his Chinese name, but yeah, but thank you very much, Mr. Yo. We've got time for a few questions, and I already have one that was submitted before the talk. It's a lengthy question, but it's a good one. I'm going to ask Bernie Yo to answer these questions, if you would. Why doesn't the West use Soviet propaganda against communism? For example, peace, P-E-A-C-E, peace to the Soviets and communism means the peace of a prison. Example, when Soviet leaders advocate advocate their peace, they never advocate freedom. Why doesn't the West prepare a dictionary of the main terms used by the Soviets and their meanings in real life, not propaganda?
Good question. The third question first. There is a, not dictionary, but we have the book called Lexicon of Soviet phrasing or something like that. We have that book. If you're interested, get in touch with me in Washington, D.C. Either call or write to me. And I forgot now. I think the book is probably $10 or something like that. But in fact, I'll make a deal with you. If you would subscribe to our newsletter, which comes out twice a month, and normally it's $15. And if you would join and subscribe to the newsletter, I'll send that lexicon of Soviet propaganda, whatever it is, free of charge. I'll give you a special discount. So that's a special deal. Okay, now about the peace movement. I, in front of young audience usually, I ask them, you want peace, don't you? I tell them, there is no peace without freedom. There is no freedom without justice. There is no justice without truth. What is truth without God? Stop there.
Comment on Jane Fonda, who betrayed our boys in Vietnam and our country and is now enjoying great success with her exercise books.
Interesting you would ask this question. 3 days ago, I had lunch with her husband, Tom Hayden. Yes. For the last 2 months now, we've been friends, getting closer and closer. So I cannot tell you any more, but within the next few months, you will hear something very, very heartwarming, very encouraging, and about them.
Do the people of China today feel closer to us than to the Russians?
You know what's going on in the mind of the Chinese? They think America is so wonderful that you can do no wrong, that everything is absolutely great, far better than it really is. You know how your fantasy is always better than reality? They fantasize America. So to the Chinese, to the Russians, to the Poles, to the Ukrainians, to the Estonians, Lithuanians, and Bulgarians, Albanians, America is heaven, because the communists tell them it's hell. And they know how to interpret the communist language.
What do you think about the Geneva summit? The Soviet Union is to exchange software with the U.S. Department of Education and are to help us restructure elementary and secondary education in the U.S. Why has the public no information on this?
On the exchange program, I have an entirely different view on that. In fact, I've been trying in Washington, to change their mind on exchanging of artists and athletes and educators, students. Waste time. The only thing we're offering them may be an opportunity to defect, and that's the only plus thing. No, these are people with no power. They already know America's wonderful, or far even better than America really is. As I said, they fantasize America. What we should do, in fact, if there's any exchange to be made, or ask them to visit this country, I want to invite the Central Committee members. See, those are the people that have direct influence on policy. And they, as human beings, they would have a long list by their wives to come shopping. And I can arrange for them to shop at Kmart with 10% discount. You see, the mistake of the State Department types is they take these people to the Fifth Avenue luxury stores. They have that in Soviet Union because they have big shots. It's the daily gadgets and the mountain of candies and all kinds of kitchen gadgets and these things that you have at 5 and 10 stores, send the parts to the sky, that blows their mind.
The farms are being foreclosed in the United States. Do you find that this is a socialist plot to slowly control our U.S. agricultural growth as totally state-controlled by using the bonds as that to foreclose? Explain.
Oh, I don't know anything about the farm situation. But I do know, I do have friends who are in farm business, farmers, in many states. Recently, I gave a speech to the farmers of Pennsylvania, and they had the conference, the big conference, in the Hershey Park. And I even brought back the Hershey chocolate tree this big. It was great. My daughter loved it. But they came and told me that this free market system is great. We're doing well. And I have friends other places in California, they call me. So the thing is this. I think true, real, genuine, free, uncontrolled marketplace, it's the only way to go. Now, for those who are used to government subsidies to survive and to make go, basically they are the losers, and they lose. I guess that is the